Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Jamie Hughes Show. My name as always is Jamie Hughes, and today I have a very special video for you guys as I'm going to be ranking every Halloween Horror Nights 2019 house from worst to best. So for those of you guys that don't know what Halloween Horror Nights is, it is a Halloween event that takes place in September and October in both Universal Studios Hollywood and also Universal Studios Florida. Now it's going to be the houses in Universal Studios Florida that I will be ranking today. So the event consists of haunted houses, as I've already mentioned. They are both intellectual properties, so these are films that are turned into houses, and also original houses, which are original designs and concepts that are turned into haunted houses. There are also scare zones that are both original and intellectual properties. And this year they had two shows, the Marathon of Mayhem, which was the Lagoon show, and also Academy of Villains Altered State. Now before I jump into this video, obviously these are my own thoughts and opinions and my own personal rankings of the houses. So if you guys have been to Halloween Horror Nights this year, then let me know your rankings down in the comments below. And just as a little side note, if you haven't been yet, obviously I will be talking about the houses, so there may be some possible spoilers in here for you. I know I'm ranking these houses from worst to best, but I don't think there was a bad house this year. There were some exceptionally good houses, but I thought as a whole every house was unique, every house offered something different. And yeah, I don't think there was a bad house this year. I think they were all solid at least, but you know, it's always fun to rank stuff, so that's what I'm here to do today. So in at number 10, it is Depths of Fear. Now I really like this house. It was a fun house. It had a cool concept. You know, you were going into an underground mine facility. I thought the look of this house was so well done. I mean, the theming was exceptional. The fact that they had like actual running water in parts of the house was so cool to see. Now I really liked the human scare actors that were in this house. I thought they were so freaky, and it felt like every time you went through you'd spot somebody different, a different character. But I think what let it down for me, as cool as they looked, I thought the mouth brooders were just a little bit clunky for the house. They were a little bit too big, and most of the time you could kind of see them coming before they were already there because they kind of stuck out a little bit like sore thumbs. So yeah, that's kind of the reason why it is so low on my list. Next up on my list is Us, and I'm really kind of surprised that this was so low on my list because I was one of those people that speculates nice and early about Horror Nights houses, and the opening weekend of Us I said that this would make a brilliant haunted house. It would make a brilliant Horror Nights house, and I think it did work. I really like the way that they recreated the scenes of the movie. It really looked like the film. I just think the scares weren't really there. I think the first half of the house was really strong. You know, you entered through the kind of glass or mirror maze, and then as you went through the, you know, the house, the lake house, and then as we progressed, it just kind of felt like it started to tail off a little bit. The scares just kind of didn't feel like they were properly there. There was one really cool scare in this house that I wanted to point out, and it's when you're walking through the forest scene. There is a scare actor kind of hanging from a tree, and 2 or 3 times I went through this house and I wasn't sure whether she was real or a dummy, and then the last time I kind of looked at her, she moved and she got me pretty damn good. But yeah, I'd say it was still a solid house. It just kind of tailed off towards the end. However, the ending of this house is pretty cool, where it's the hands across America and there's just wall to wall of people and you don't know who's real, you don't know who's fake, and I think that worked very well. In at number 8, another shocker, and this was Stranger Things. Now last year, Stranger Things was well and truly my favourite house, but I think this year, it wasn't a bad house, but I don't think it was really scary. Whereas last year you had the shocks of like demogorgons coming from left, right and centre. Whereas this year it kind of felt more of like an appreciation of season 2 and season 3. There wasn't as many scares. I mean, this house was exceptional. The theming once again was incredible. The ending scene of season 2, there was just wall-to-wall demogorgons and demodogs, looked amazing. The giant mind flayer Hopper's cabin, that scene was incredible. Like, it looked exactly like the show. Erica as a little like Easter egg jump scare at the end of the maze too was a really cool touch. And yeah, it was a good house. It was a really nice looking house, but it didn't have the same effect that season 1's house last year had on me. In at number 7, it is Nightingales Blood Pit. This is my first encounter of the Nightingales at Halloween Horror Nights, and bloody hell do they stink. This was such a cool concept for a house. You know, it was taking place underneath the Colosseums in the blood pits of ancient Rome, and from that first scare, I was like, nah, I am done. The first time I saw a Nightingale, I was like, I do not want to go through this house. I think this is one of the first houses we went through this year when we first got to the event, and oh God, it was the first time I was like, I just want to get out of this house. Like, I don't want to appreciate what it looks like. I don't want to like take it all in. I just want to get out of this house because I was so scared, because the scares were coming from every angle. They were thick and fast, and Jesus Christ, that lion. I only got the lion scare once, but that was enough for me. It was like, nah, like, it was terrifying. For those of you guys that like to find Halloween Horror Nights Easter eggs, I will let you know that the Well Walker from the Walking Dead house a few years ago is in that house in some way, shape or form. You will have to try and look for him. Next up, we have House of 1,000 Corpses, and oh, this house just grew on me every time I walked through it. I loved it. I love Captain Spaulding. I love this movie, and I wasn't sure how it was going to translate to a house, but I think this was the most quotable house for me this year. Like, so many times I was just walking around in the day in Florida just going, I'm the one who brings you Christmas candy. I loved it. It looked so cool. It felt very true to the film. It had a very like grungy feel to it, and the reason why this kind of holds a special place in my heart, this house this year, is that we were over there when the magnificent Sid Haig sadly passed away, and we went through the house like kind of a couple of days after he'd passed, the first like Halloween Horror Nights night after that had happened, and I just love the fact that they put some roses on Captain Spaulding's desk as a tribute. It was a beautiful thing to see, and yeah, this is one of those houses that really transcended quickly from like so much fun to like, Jesus Christ, this is terrifying and I want to get out of here. Once you kind of got into the tombs of the house, it was just so freaky and just so frightening, but just so much fun. Next up, we have Yeti, Terror of the Yukon. I love this house. It was so much fun. I was a big fan of the kind of section that was in Slaughter Cinema last year of like the Swamp Yeti. So when I knew they were bringing Yetis back to Halloween Horror Nights, oh, my heart was ready. And yeah, such like a really great and innovative way of scaring people. I loved the hand that kind of fell down that scared you from above. We also saw that in Depths of Fear too, but having like Yetis above you, it just felt so claustrophobic and intimidating, and those Yetis were not afraid to get up close and personal. A couple of times I went through this house and I had Yeti hands coming like inches away from my face. Again, such a cool concept for a house taking place on the Yukon. What are those things? They're everywhere, and then just chaos ensues, and there are Yetis coming at you from every angle. Just such a fun house. I walked through this house so many times after the first time I've been through it and been scared with just the biggest grin on my face. It was so much fun. So now that we're halfway through this list, I thought I would quickly rank the scare zones that took place in Halloween Horror Nights this year too. So in at number 4, we had Vikings Undead. I thought this was terrible, I'm not going to lie. Not a fan of the scare zone whatsoever. It just felt too clunky, and it felt too close together, and it felt like you couldn't actually appreciate what was going on, but it was kind of too hard to actually know what was going on in the scare zone, and it just kind of felt a little bit weak, if I'm being honest. In at number 3, it is Rob Zombie Hellbilly Deluxe. I really liked this scare zone. I thought it was a lot of fun. They had a lot of different elements from the album going on, and I think some worked better than others, but I think, again, my biggest criticism of this scare zone is that it was kind of a little bit too compact, and it took a fair few times going through this scare zone to actually kind of catch everything that was going on. Next up, we have an arcade, which was the opening scare zone of HHN this year. It was the first thing that greeted you when you entered the park. Really enjoyed this scare zone. It was a whole lot of fun. Really liked the theming of a creepy 1980s video game coming to life and taking you down. Loved all of the still actors with their nunchucks just whipping around left, right and centre. Got some great scares off them. I also loved all of the arcade machines that they had that were all Horror Nights themed. I love that they were basically disguised as photo ops, but when you went to go and get a photo with them, all of the scare actors would jump out and scare you from behind these arcade machines. A whole lot of fun. And now also, I don't really know where to rank this because it wasn't an official scare zone, but we had the roaming chainsaws of Springfield. So much fun. I had one of my favourite moments of HHN this year in this kind of roaming scare zone. The guy, he's kind of become famous now. He's kind of a Horror Nights legend. He had the chainsaw, and he was the guy that kind of walks but doesn't rev it all the time. He goes like, ah. Or he goes, chainsaw noise, and he goes, no, 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 stuff like that. He was really fun. I caught him scaring this group of kids, and he got them so good. They completely bolted in loads of different directions. They were running down emergency exits, and it was just such a fun thing to capture and experience live. In at number 2 is Zombieland and Zombieland Double Tap. Again, just a fun scare zone, had the biggest amount of space. I mean, it really just kind of was just zombies floating around, but they had some fun callbacks to the first movie. You had the Wayland's Pacific panned prize hut where Tallahassee shoots all the zombies. There was a lot of fun going on there. They also had the kind of drop tower ride where they did Zombie Kill of the Week. But my favourite part of this scare zone was rule number 3, beware of bathrooms, because they had a mannequin set up where you could open the toilet door and it would shoot water at each other and it would shoot water at other people. I had a whole lot of fun hanging about there. But my favourite scare zone this year was, of course, Vanity Ball. So much fun. We found ourselves sitting in this scare zone so many times and just watching what was going on. We loved the music. We were stood there shazamming away trying to catch out all the songs that were in this scare zone. It looked really great, and to be honest with you, I wasn't really excited for this scare zone before I left. I was like, it's just going to be alright, and I just had so much fun. Every time I went in there, it just felt like a party, and it was great. Quickly, I just want to talk about the shows that were there too. You had Academy of Villains. They were back this year with Altered States. I thought this was a really solid show. We go and see these shows, but they aren't really our thing, but I still really enjoyed them. I thought it was a massive step up from last year's show. I loved that you kind of had all of the different elements going on, and it did kind of feel like it felt more like it tied in with the theme of Horror Nights this year, which was a whole lot of fun. But yeah, even if these shows, these dance shows aren't for you, please go and watch them, because you will still have a great time, and the amount of dedication that goes into these shows by the performers is second to none, and you will just have a great time watching it. And then this year we also had a Lagoon show which was called Marathon of Mayhem. I almost forgot it for a sec there, but this was Marathon of Mayhem, and this was kind of all of the best bits and all of the kind of best scenes from the shows and the houses that the houses were based on this year. And again, this was great. It was so worth going to see this show. I think we saw it about 2 or 3 times, because every time you pick something different up from this show, and yeah, it was just absolutely great. It looked so great. I think the music choices that were in there too really elevated it to another level. Fantastic. Next up, we have Killer Klowns from Outer Space, and I love the movie. I loved what they did with the house here. I loved the scare zone last year, so I was so happy that it was popular enough that they could translate it into a house this year. And I just love the fact that this house didn't really follow a true narrative to the movie. It was just the greatest hits. It was great scene after great scene after great scene. I fell in love with this house from the moment I walked into it, and it was, what are you gonna do? Knock my block off? And then out comes Shorty. It was just so much fun, and I mean this in the nicest way possible and with so much love and so much warmth. But I love the fact that this felt like a really cheap old school haunted house. It had old school scares with a lot of the drop doors. It had the buttons that you could press that would shoot people. There was loads of like stuff in face and loads of just funny camp noises. And yeah, it was just so, again, so much fun. That was what was so great about this house, is that a lot of the houses were terrifying, but I felt like I could really relax and enjoy this house because it was just so much fun. Next up, we have Universal Monsters, and this, without a doubt, was my biggest surprise of the year. I was kind of like, oh, okay, this is going to be a cool house. It's going to have, like, some classic monsters in it. But every time I went through this house, it just got better and better and better and elevated itself to another level every time. I love that we didn't just get the three kind of icons that were advertised for the house in the Wolfman, the Mummy and Dracula. We also got a few extras in there. We got the Hunchback of Notre Dame, we got Phantom of the Opera, we got Bride of Frankenstein, and it was just so terrifying. And again, it was one of those houses where, like, every room you went through, it kind of felt like you had a different vibe. I think Frankenstein's monster was so great. There was one time I went through that house and he like bolted towards me to scare me. I love that they had a giant Frankenstein's monster at the end of the maze too. God damn it, that bitch, the Bride of Frankenstein, every time I went through, she'd come out of her boo hole and got me, and that scream was just blood-curdling and terrifying. But yeah, such a surprise, this house. As I say, every time I went through it, it elevated itself to another level, and yeah, love this house. In at number 2, it is Graveyard Games, and for me, without a doubt, I think this was the scariest house of the year. Again, a really fun concept. It was these two teenagers that had kind of dismantled and kind of disrespected this graveyard. So the Watching Mother, I can't remember her actual title, but I think she's the Watching Mother. She comes out and tries to seek her revenge on Sid and Nancy, and yeah, this was terrifying. There were so many great scares in this house. You had the kind of guy that looked like a semi-animatronic, and then he would just whip out at you around the corner. You had the guy that was kind of on the floor whipping out at you. I think my favourite scare of the year took place in this house, and that was when you were walking down the corridor and you had like stone statues either side of you, and I was like, right, I know one of these is going to move. And you know when you lull yourself into a false sense of security, I was like, one of these is going to move, one of these is going to move. It didn't move, and then all of a sudden it just got me such a cool scare. And we also got another one of the Us type rooms where there were loads of little creepy kids and little creepy dolls hanging about in a room, and they decided to jump at you. There was a really innovative way of scaring you in this house as well. It was kind of like, I don't know the best way of describing it, like an echo chamber. Like, it sucked all of the sound out of the room you were in. It was pitch black and all you could hear was the kids' voices. And it just took your like natural voice away from you, and it just felt like you were walking through silence with these little echoes. A really fun jump scare at the end, and yeah, just such a strong house. One of the best originals that was there this year, and I think one of the best originals we've seen for a while in terms of just scariness, look, design and everything. And finally, my favourite house of Halloween Horror Nights 2019, I think it's pretty obvious, but it was obviously Ghostbusters. Yes, it wasn't scary. Do I care? Absolutely not. This house was so much fun. I loved it. It just had everything, and I think the way that it recreated the classic scenes from the film and translated those into a Halloween Horror Nights house was so well done. And yeah, I love this house from the first time I went through it. But for me, why this was so good is I got the best run through ever in this house, and it was like the last time we were supposed to be there until like our flight got cancelled and we got an extra couple of days in Florida. But you know, the last time we went through this house, we hit every single scare. We got the classic line from Janine. We got the "Hello Ghostbusters, yes they're serious, you have, we got one." We got that, which just made my absolute life, because we'd missed it every time we'd gone through before then, and we just hit every single scare perfectly. And then to top it all off, I got a high five from Bill Murray. I didn't know that could happen. My hand was kind of there, and then next thing you know, he gave me a sweet old high five. But yeah, they got everything right about this house. You know, sometimes translating, you know, movies into houses doesn't really work. We kind of half saw that with Us this year, but when it works, it's absolutely fantastic. And yeah, just Ghostbusters was absolutely incredible. They just nailed everything. There was not one thing that I thought, oh, that didn't really work, or they could have done something differently. It just all worked, it all came together, and bloody hell did it knock my socks off. And that bloody Slimer scare at the end of the maze was so good. I saw somebody mention this on a Horror Nights group, that I wish they had like a camera so you could see people getting scared by that Slimer, because it was so well positioned, and it just wasn't over the top terrifying, but it was just so much fun. I can't even, I feel like I'm waffling because I loved it so much. But yeah, what an absolute great house it was. And overall, what an absolute great year it was for Halloween Horror Nights. I thought it was so much fun. A really strong and solid year. If nothing else, it's built my excitement for next year. I hope I can get there and experience it for the big 30th birthday party. And yeah, as I said, if you guys have been to Halloween Horror Nights this year, let me know all your thoughts on the houses, and let me know your rankings down in the comments below. And if you did enjoy this video and you want to keep up to date with all the latest movie news and reviews and awesome bonus features like all of this sort of goodness that's just happened in this video, then make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in the very next episode of The Jamie Hughes Show. Ta-ra!